Cybersecurity Australia acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respect to them and their cultures and elders past, present and future.
Thank you very much, Anne. My name is Anita CSWY and I'm one of the board members of our WiCYS Australia community. We're very excited today to have a very special guest, Chris Kubecka. Chris is, I think, currently in London, is an American computer security researcher and cyber warfare specialist. In 2012, Chris was responsible for getting the Saudi Aramco network back up and running after it was hit by one of the world's most devastating Shannon cyber attacks. Chris has also worked in the US Air Force as a Loadmaster, United States Space Command, and is now the CEO of Hypersec, a security firm she founded in 2015. Chris has done a lot more, including research and involved in many associations and development of industry practices. Welcome, Chris.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting me. This is so exciting.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Thank you. We're going to get to know a lot more about you and what you've done and what you've got into. Before we make a start, I just wanted to quickly introduce our panel members who are also part of our board for the WiCYS Australia community. And so we have Nicola Nicol with us, Dr. Elena Sitnikova, Anne Cool, and Jane Chow Ariagada. Hi, ladies.
Hi there.
Hello. Thank you. Go ahead, Nicola.
Thank you. So Chris, firstly, wonderful to meet you. You know, I lived in London at one point too, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that later. As we kick off the session, I thought it would be great to hear a little bit of your journey that brought you to be with us today. So if I think about, you know, perhaps your career path into cyber, I think that'd be a really great place for us to start. Maybe some of those highlights.
All right. So I got started pretty young. I was lucky enough, I guess, to have a mother who was in technology. And she was very, very good at computer science and worked her way up because unfortunately at the time it was not too lady friendly to be in such careers. So she had to work quite hard. And because of that, she ended up teaching me how to do basic Fortran and COBOL programming at a very young age. But as a mischievous child, I must say, I must have been every parent's nightmare. I ended up going to the darker side because I was quite curious. I was always trying to learn things. And I ended up mistakenly finding a way into some Department of Justice computers and systems. And so when I was 10 years old, they came to my school and caught me in the library red-handed. I do not think they were expecting a 10-year-old girl in suits armed to say hello. So I kept going with learning about computers, even though I wasn't allowed to use one for almost 8 years. And then I was recruited by the US Air Force, where my first job, I was a loadmaster, but on the side, I also managed the network, antivirus, and did a lot of the security. And then after I was injured in the line of duty in a combat mission, I ended up getting recruited by Space Command, handling cybersecurity for them for the telemetry information to make sure that we could always view the world as our mission dictated, as well as doing command and control systems, which deals with collection and securing the lines that certain types of intelligence comes in from Space Command. So I was always very curious about things. I didn't like to take no for an answer. When it came to being told that, well, I should go over here and do this. And I was like, no, I want to do this. I've always been fascinated with building what I like to imagine like the perfect virtual world in this kind of space, because we still have a ways to go in the world with many other things. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's been so fascinating for me and why I've been so passionate about this particular career field.
That's wonderful, Chris, and I love the curiosity. Firstly, I think in our field, it's a really important thing to kind of try to continue, no matter how far in your career you get, no matter how old you get. I think thinking about being curious is a really important part of it. So love that you highlighted that. Elena, I'm going to hand off to you to follow up with the next question.
Hello, Chris. It's so lovely to see you over the continents. I was trying to remember when we first met. That was 5 years ago, 2015 in Sacramento, when I was very impressed with your talk about the case study in Saudi Aramco. I'm still using that case for my teaching and always say, I know the person who put everything together back after the big disaster. So since that, we've seen each other in Amsterdam, have still great memories and great participation in hacking conference we went to. So I think this is a great opportunity for us. Even we can't travel, we can invite you to virtual world.
Yes.
And my the question which I would like to ask you, because I follow your work, as you know, and some research your group done on providing the third-party provider to intelligence organization one stage the weak encryption key outdated, which caused a lot of questions. Why are they doing it? Is it a trust, and is it the situation everybody can face? And my question is, what you think about research, how you place research for your work, and how we can propagate at our universities with students to do research. And what's your vision into that? Thank you.
Well, one of the things I like about research is it drives that curiosity. And you might start out with this idea, this thesis, and completely disprove yourself, which is actually, to me, quite exciting. And I think that research in the area should be fostered. Now, I do understand there is the dilemma of how far do you go when you're doing security research, what is legal and what is not. But I think that countries like Australia, UK, Netherlands, and quite a few others now are enabling and fostering that security research and working with people in universities, academia, and in the private sector. And it brings up a lot of questions, like with the weak encryption keys involving intelligence agencies and so forth. It starts a conversation when you're doing research about this kind of stuff. And that conversation should continue. I also think it's a good way that if you are a student and you're learning about these things and you find some of these things, it also enables you to build your network before you graduate by going, hey, listen, I found this issue. I'm telling you about it. I'm doing it in a secure manner because they want all these reports securely. They don't want everybody knowing because they also want that opportunity to fix it. And you end up having a dialogue, and then they put you on their radar in a positive way because you're seen as someone that's helping. And you're also gaining experience writing a succinct report that is understandable and working with the group to solve major issues, because none of us really want, for instance, intelligence apparatus to have weak encryption keys and give away things to someone that shouldn't have those things. But I think research is very important because it gets you in this mindset of trying to prove and disprove things and making sure that you've got more than one piece of verifiable information, because it can be easy to find something on one particular particular tool, and if you report it and they're like, no, that tool and that information was very old, it's been fixed, and you're like, oh, egg on face. So you also learn that scientific method of using other ways to verify what you're actually finding. And that's one of the things I love about research, and also research collaboration, is because you start out with this thought, it ends up not being quite as you thought. And then when you start collaborating, you also get this difference of perspective that you would not have considered before. Believe it's the saying is walking in another person's shoes. It's very difficult to do that unless you have collaboration, and also diversity in research, because you might only be looking at it from, say, your socioeconomic background, but you don't realize other things. Like when I see a lot of research being done about, oh, so many computer systems aren't secured this way or that way, but they fail to understand, for example, that it can be kind of expensive to secure computers or your smartphone, because if you have, say, an Android, they're not going to give you updates after 2 or 3 years. So thinking about it in these perspectives, and that's what I love about collaborating with research, because it's also a bit more exciting to talk to people and get their ideas and their input. But I think research is extremely important in this field.
Yes, thank you. That's what I put approach within my master's level courses, that when the students have to do research, it's research-led teaching. So they have to investigate, they have to write down, report what they find out, and that gives them a good exposure. And of course, bringing diverse class, we have people from different disciplines working together in a class exercises. So we're sort of preparing them for the future work. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
And now to Jane.
Thank you, Eleanor. Chris, it's a privilege to have your time tonight. So thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to have a chat to you. I guess one of my questions is that WiCYS is establishing the student chapters here in Australia. So we've got students coming into the workforce. And I guess what I'd be interested in is what are 2 top must-have interview questions that you would, interview someone with?
2 big questions I would ask is, what type of experience have you been able to gain? And this is actually a really tricky one, because many people think, hey, I've got this degree, so I should be able to get into an entry-level job in cybersecurity. And unfortunately, there's more of an emphasis on experience. So one of the things that I recommend, which will also help answer the second question I usually have, is if you are doing your degree and you want to get some experience, there are so many charities and NGOs out there that are desperate for any sort of input, whether it's helping them to say, DMARC on an email, whether it's helping them get a password manager to keep track of things. You don't have to start big, you can start small. And these organizations really, really need help. And you can gain real world experience and see what it's like. Look at Aboriginal societies, look at child welfare organizations, look at domestic shelters, look at a bevy of these organizations. They're struggling with budgets, especially now, because unfortunately the pandemic has kind of squeezed people. And they have a difficult choice of, do we spend money on the newest and greatest security, or do we spend money on helping people? So you can help with that gap and get that experience that you need. And that's looked at very, very highly by employers. Another question that I usually ask is, what is really your passion? Why do you like it so much, this particular field? And it also gives me an idea of what the person actually wants to do in security, cybersecurity, because it's such a broad topic now. There's so many different things in it. And if you're still trying to decide, do I like web app? Do I like networking? Do I like this? Do I like that? Because there seems to be 150 different ways to do cybersecurity, if not more. And it also helps you narrow down the areas that you most like. And when you really, really like something and you're passionate about it, you're going to learn more about it. You're going to put more energy into it. And when you combine getting that experience in a way that looks really great for employers, plus makes you feel good by giving back to different communities, and you can then start narrowing the passion down, because I'm a big believer in trying to develop people continually throughout their career in what they want to do, not what they have to do necessarily.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jane. I know that you've got some others as well. I was going to open it up to the panel shortly, but we'll come back to you, Jane, because I know you've got some other really great questions. Chris, you brought up some really important items. One of the key goals that we have for WiCYS Australia is to actually enable communities and help them understand and make cybersecurity a life skill. And you've mentioned the Aboriginal communities, which is an area that Anne is very much focusing on, and helping the communities understand cybersecurity awareness. I know that you have travelled a lot across the globe, and I'm keen to understand, you've seen a lot, understand more around how you actually, what you've seen out there in the communities, and the actual impact you've made yourself and you've seen other people make with regards to helping people understand cybersecurity.
Well, I have traveled a lot. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. I kind of miss it. But I've seen, depending on where you are in the world, some very interesting situations. There are some places where I visited and I have seen certain religious and ethnic groups struggling because of oppressive regimes, or being a not well-liked minority. And when they try to help out their own people and keep them safe, various organizations, they struggle with even the most basic security, which can, unfortunately, in some places in the world, put them in a very, very bad place, because not every country is very nice, unfortunately, or not every situation. I've seen the importance of cybersecurity in some communities, and we've heard of it, but it's just too complicated and a big struggle, because unfortunately security is still kind of not the easiest thing in the world to do. I mean, even setting up antivirus can be a struggle for doing the settings if you are a person who is not very experienced with computers. This is one of the problems that we have, especially where I've seen in some of the more senior communities, where, say, adult housing and communities, they really, really struggle because they get scammed a lot. Yeah, they just don't know the basics, and they're struggling or dealing with other things, and this is kind of the last thing on their mind. They just want to be able to contact their grandkids or their families, not have to worry about setting up something complicated. Now, when I was a kid, and I'm sure most of you listening got the kind of speech from your parents or your family: don't go down a dark alleyway. Be careful of how you dress when you go in certain places or certain areas. Try to keep a bit of extra money on you, just in case, not in your wallet, right? In case you're mugged, and always have your phone number to call home. And we have these types of things when it deals with physical safety, but unfortunately we don't have these types of things when it deals with cybersecurity. And so we find ourselves in uncomfortable situations. For example, a lot of domestic violence victims are now being surveilled by their abusers through IoT. And it's something that you don't think of when you have gone and left an unsafe situation, or they have been made to leave, and then suddenly you have no heat because they still have access to your Google Nest. or they are still stalking you on social media and you don't know how to set privacy settings. So I've seen a lot of different areas where cybersecurity needs to be easier. And there also needs to be more people brought into the fold without this big barrier that I keep seeing more and more of must have bachelor's, master's, maybe even PhD for an entry-level job and 20 years experience, which makes no sense to me. We have a shortage of this kind of stuff. And in order to filter it down to the communities and to people who need it and people who need to be really thinking about cybersecurity, if we don't have more people in the field to then make it easier for everyone else, it's going to continue to be a losing battle. I hope in 20 years' time, kids will be taught, all right, so always put a passcode on your phone. Use a passphrase instead of a complicated password so you can remember it. Always make sure that your social media is set to private if you're having a problem. And change all the passwords on your IoT if you go through a relationship breakup.
Yeah, thank you. And I've got some great ideas that I've noted down there with lots of questions to come. I'll pass it back on to Jane.
I actually have a question that I just thought about now, but I know that you've seen so much and done so much in your career, but what are the types of initiatives now or projects that you get involved in that gets you really excited and that you're involved in it?
Well, as of yesterday, I officially became the distinguished chair for the cyber program for the Middle East Institute,
Wow,
which is quite exciting.
congratulations.
Thank you. Which is quite exciting because I've had a great interest in the Middle East for quite some time. I started going there when I was in the military. And one of the things that we're working on now is doing a comparative study on how there are so many more women in technology in the Middle East percentage-wise than there are in most of the Western countries. So it's very similar to Romania, Bulgaria, parts of Central and Eastern Europe, where you have equal or sometimes a majority of people in tech who are actually women. And Saudi Arabia, software development has been very empowering for women, and the vast majority of software developers happen to be women. The same in Iran, the same in some of the other Middle Eastern countries. And also startups by women are funded. 1/3 of all tech startups in the Arab world are women-led. And that's very different from, say, what I look at Silicon Valley, where a very small percentage are women-led and an even smaller percentage are actually funded. And seeing all of the merging technology that is coming out of the Middle East, especially UAE, is very, very exciting. They just established a Minister of Artificial Intelligence towards the end of 2019. And they want to drive their economy with technology in a positive way, improve government efficiency, improve healthcare. They want to diversify and get more and more away from oil and more into technology. And they really want to be a technology hub again. So I'm really excited about that, and also about some of their initiatives that are going on in the Middle East. And the fact that there are so many opportunities for women in the Middle East, where when I first started going to Saudi 25 years ago almost, it was a very, very different place. And so was Dubai. And so I'm really excited about being part of the cyber program and looking at the ethics of some of the technology, the diversification for gender and race, of course, national security and defense always falls into that. Privacy issues are very, very important. And then also disinformation and online extremism and how that's occurring in that part of the world. So it's quite exciting right now because there's so much stuff to do over there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was going to just, you've mentioned the word privacy, which is pretty special and close to Jane and myself. And just thinking about organisations and culture. And in Australia in particular, we're starting to see, or have been over the last few years, a rise in, data breaches taking place as a result of human error. And I'm keen to understand, organisations work very, very hard with regards to trying to educate and raise the awareness within their organisations. Absolutely critical from the people perspective to try and manage things. Keen to understand your experience and maybe give us some great examples that you've seen in organisations where they've done that really well.
Well, there are some organizations who have done it very well. I would have to say that if an organization values and understands the relationship between privacy and security, and they keep that in mind as early on as possible, then they have a tendency to do that very well. And if there's a data breach, then they have a tendency to also try to take care of that matter as quickly as possible, because breaches happen, unfortunately, because it's very easy to make, say, one configuration change and whoops. And that's the way life is now, more and more, unfortunately. I have seen for organizations that do it well. I was very impressed with Saudi Aramco before the EU GDPR came into place. I worked with legal and pushed them to go, hey, it's going to come in a couple of years. This is going to be major, since the different types of data that go back and forth between many countries in Saudi. So if we plan now, that means we're not going to be fined, and a whole bunch of stuff is going to come down the line. And they saw that return on investment. So that's another aspect. If an organization goes, it's going to cost us this much if it happens, but it's going to cost that much if we do it ahead of time and start establishing things. I have seen other kind of like-minded organizations like Aramco, also quite big with privacy. So when you're dealing with organizations that do staffing and recruiting around the world, especially in some, we'll say, not as safe and slightly dangerous parts of the world, then they have a tendency to take that very, very seriously because they don't want the information getting out to bad people. So I've seen some positive things there. And yeah, there are, good stories about privacy. They just seem to be few and far between if we open up the newspaper, unfortunately.
Yes, it is. And, it's all about the culture in the organisation as well. I might just open it up to the panel and forum to see if anyone's got any other questions.
I love questions.
Yeah, I've got lots. I just didn't want to be greedy about them. Chris, I want to ask you about the books that you've written. Now, you're an extremely busy person doing they say that busy people end up doing lots of different things, but I don't think you actually get much sleep. But no. Keen to hear about what inspired you to write these particular books. And I know that you're also writing some new books, and I look forward to hearing when they're going to be published. But perhaps just give us your inspiration to write, when you wrote these particular books as a starting point.
So when I wrote the Down the Rabbit Hole and OSINT Journey, it started out because I had heard about the Panama Papers law firm issue, and I immediately decided to do some exploration after the first rumors were coming out about it. And so I ended up documenting everything that I did, including all of the tools that I used. And then I contacted the ICIJ because I actually found even more information that was exposed, an archive server and a few other things, such as I picked up that there were already 4 government-grade remote access Trojans running on the client login, where the clients, whether legitimate or not, could buy and sell shell companies and do some money laundering. So I ended up writing them a workbook on how to verify everything that I did, and also to be able to obtain the additional archival server data on top of what had already been leaked out to them. And from there, I was like, well, how could I turn this into a book to show how you can use all these different tools with interesting targets? Because that makes it more exciting if you have interesting targets.
Yes.
So then I ended up expanding it and trying to be unbiased. So I looked at the Democratic National Party and the Republican Party, and found a lot of interesting things showing how to use the tools and what the importance was, showing some of the issues in the Dutch voting tabulation board that tabulates all of the votes in the Netherlands, a couple of right-wing parties, and just looking around and trying to show how to use the tool, interesting stuff, lots of memes. I happen to love memes because I think that if you laugh while you're learning something, then it really sticks. And then also ultimately showing what the risks are for if there is a major issue. And so application proven. So I really enjoyed writing that book. And then Hack the World with OSINT. I wanted to do a deep dive into the free, and I want to stress this because somebody left a terrible false review on the book. I've only ever used the free version of census.io. And so I wanted to document and go through all of the different things that you could do on the different, say, technology topics. So looking at email, looking at web servers, looking at IoT, looking at ICS, et cetera, and also teaching some of the basics of what the differences are, what's important to not show on the internet, and some of the information about the protocols to help people get their feet wet a little bit, especially in IoT and ICS. And ultimately how easy it is for organizations, whether they're just a company or in the case of, I put in a couple of intelligence agency issues, how easy it is for, say, that one configuration change to go whoops, and also why it's important to be proactive, especially using tools that don't cost a fortune. Because I hear that complaint a lot from companies. Oh, it's going to cost us a fortune for this and this and this. Actually, it was all done using the free version of Census. So I like low cost, no cost tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're writing a book that's currently with the publisher at the moment.
Yes, I'm being represented by Inkwell Management, and I'm currently finishing up a book proposal, which will be done the next couple of weeks, on a book about my career. So it'll discuss what happened at Saudi Aramco for the Shamoon attack and how the recovery went. It'll also go into detail about the 2014 Saudi Arabia embassy attack by cyber terrorists. And all sorts of espionage that went on with that. It'll also discuss Boeing and the issues, how I got started, North and South Korea, and how I got involved with their cyber warfare issues there. Some other embassy issues, which involved leaking of information that got some people unfortunately killed. And a few other instances, and also discussing the Panama Papers leaks and so forth. So hopefully I just have a bit more to write and then we finish with the proposal.
No, that's great. We just need to, so what's the timeline for that one? Is that coming out just in time for Christmas, or is it early next year?
Well, first the proposal, then it gets, see, I'm new at this because I've never had an agent like this. So then it gets shopped around by the agent, and then hopefully she wants to get it in for before December, so that hopefully in the next like 6 months or so, then it'll be published.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward to hearing about that book and purchasing it straight away. We've got a question in the chat, Chris, and that's really wanting to hear about what emerging, innovative security solutions have sparked your interest recently.
Well, looking at a few things. some of the challenges that we have right now is with 5G, and then as 6G or 6E comes along, we're going to be using IP version 6 a lot more. And there is not a lot of tooling for IP6. There's a lot for IP4 because it's easier. It's much, much smaller. But IP version 6, huge, right? You know, what is it, 32 billion possible IP addresses. So looking at a way to kind of crunch data and create tools that can actually expand out to that as more and more gets connected. And so looking at actual, I want to stress because it seems to be a buzzword, actual solid machine learning by setting up training data on verified attacks against IoT. So we're looking at tagging and categorizing a rather large verified data set and going through that so that we can then incorporate that with IP version 6 tooling and make that available to other researchers who want to use that. Looking forward at the post-quantum world, I've been asked recently to consider writing a paper with another researcher at the University of Oxford along the lines of hacking in a post-quantum world, and comparing some of the algorithms and ciphers that we can use in a post-quantum world versus today, where a lot of them can, if enough qubits are actually controlled, could be deciphered. So that's quite exciting. I just have to find the time.
Well, we're happy to come and help you, Chris.
Yes.
I've got 2 more questions to ask you, and I know we're almost running out of time, but a lot of what you've just spoken to us is can sound very technical for a lot of people that are not pure cybersecurity, I guess, experts and have been involved in that industry. And certainly for myself, I learned about privacy and I learned about cybersecurity and became interested in it. But certainly, it's across disciplines that people need to be aware of it in organizations, and that's really critical to bring, have the risk people understand and the HR teams understand, etc. Based on your experience, how have you tried to bring together all of those silos so they create the culture and build this cybersecurity awareness in organizations? What's one of the key skills that you have found to be successful in being able to achieve something like that?
Communication. I know some people consider it this soft skill that is not as important as being technical. I would say it's more important than being technical in cybersecurity, because you have to explain to the legal department, to the HR department, to the procurement department, to accounts payable, accounts receivable, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have to do counter what I call executive attention deficit disorder.
I love it.
You heard it
Great.
here first.
Yeah.
Where you cannot mention anything technical. The most that you can provide in writing is a maximum of 2 short written paragraphs. That's it. And you have to get to know the different departments and their functions so that you can then understand the risk and communicate it to them. So why would accounts payable be more at risk than accounts receivable, depending on the organization, or vice versa? And in order to do that, you need communication skills over, goodness forbid, if you ever show up to a presentation with executives and you're showing them a packet capture and they're like, who are you and why are you wasting my time? I don't know what this is.
No.
So communication is, I would say, the most important skill in cybersecurity and privacy.
No doubt about that. And you mentioned earlier on is that, the ability to walk in other people's shoes and going into those departments and really understanding what they actually do to be able to articulate that. I do have one last question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't like, Chris, but I was going to ask you, what do you know now that you wish you knew a few years back?
What do I know now that I wish I'd known a few years back? Other than winning lottery tickets, don't Playing the lotto. I wish I had found mentors earlier on in my career. When I started out, I felt a bit lost because it was still quite new, and the military was great, but sometimes their mentorship is not the greatest. And I was like literally the only woman in the area. I think if there had been organizations like yours and others early on, I think I would be the distinguished chair squared. I don't know.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes.
But yeah, finding mentorship and finding multiple mentors. And that's something that I started doing probably about 15 years ago, but I wish I had done much earlier because I think it would have helped me with, getting a peer review on different ideas. That network, that's really where you get jobs, is through your network, not so much the job ads. And being steered into better directions instead of just going and opening books and going, oh my God, I can't do this. And helps with the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome as well.
Yeah, indeed. So it's amazing how you've responded that so beautifully. Before I close off the session, I just want to make sure that whether we have any more questions from the panel at all this evening.
Anita, it's Nicola. I did drop one in the chat because my internet's been a bit unstable. But I just wondered, Chris, about what your thoughts are on sort of innovation, because I think at the minute it can be quite overwhelming for many organisations, especially sort of small and medium enterprises who, see lots of new tools and tech and things out there. And what sparked your interest recently, and how do you approach, looking at innovative tools and technology?
Well, I don't like shiny new boxes because shiny new boxes are quite expensive. I think if you approach it from doing kind of the basics, where understanding that if you use, for example, systems-based intelligence gathering, proactively using low-cost, no-cost tools, then you can take care of what we call that low-hanging fruit that an attacker is going to get you with, say, automated tools. You've already minimized your risk drastically, and it's gets easier and easier to do with some of these tools like Census. There's one called graynoise.io. There's a technique that I love, and it's called canary tokens, and those are all for free, where you can set up like I kind of more refer to them as landmines of fake URLs, Word documents, PDFs. There's about 20 different things that you can do. And that'll give you also an indication if somebody's going in an area that they should not be. And it's free. And these are techniques and tools that not even some of the big companies are actually incorporating, because they have a tendency to look at the shiny boxes, because the salespeople say, if you spend 800,000, it'll take care of everything, and it doesn't. So yeah, I lean more towards low cost, no cost tools and more effective types of things. Especially, I love the canary tokens. They're fantastic.
Chris, that's awesome to hear, because I think for organizations, especially with the pandemic, right, there's a lot of people trying to keep the lights on in their businesses and thinking about how they prioritize or optimize their security spend. So I think that's really great advice, focus on the basics, and low cost, no cost is a great place to start. So thank you for that.
Yes, indeed. Well, Chris, we cannot thank you enough for your, you've been very, very generous to us with your time. I've certainly learned a lot from you tonight, and I love how you have mentioned how you wish that you started your mentoring a lot earlier, because that is one of the key goals of the WiCYS Association as well. I did actually also want to mention that I'm hoping that sometime next year that you'll be able to come to Australia, and we're going to start planning that with you already, Chris. So we just need these restrictions and pandemic to be over, hopefully. But we're very grateful again for your time. And before we finish up, I just quickly wanted to mention a couple of special codes that we have for our Australian I guess people who are interested in cybersecurity and joining our association. There's a specific code that's been set up for our Australian members, and please reach out to WiCYSaustralia.org if you'd like to know more about that. In addition to that, there's also a code for those that have been impacted as a result of COVID-19. So you can use a COVID-19 membership relief option, which is only $10 for US for 6 months. So we'll be able to share that information and links at the end of this webinar as well. Without further ado, thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Thank you to all of our panel members, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you very much, Chris. Stay safe, and we look forward to catching up with you again. Have a good night, everybody. See you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.